Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Eric Hernandez here with...
Doug.
It feels weird because we just did it before and never doing it again.
Yeah, some spooky shit.
If you listen to the end of the episode, you'll know what we're talking about. On this episode, we talk about a bunch of different things. Off the top of my head or off the top of my computer here. Slotherhouse. Just as silly as it sounds. It's always good for a laugh. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, the new animated series that's going to be coming to Netflix. And the unionization of the Marvel special effects artists. And then, of course, Doug watches Barbie. We get his take on it. We'll save it for the actual episode. We won't go into it any further than that. We are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can always find us under the podcast section. Check us out over at Rabblecast.libsyn.com. Make sure you check out our channel, YouTube.com/Rabblecast. Send us a tweet, because that's what we call it, over at Rabblecast. Check out the Rabblecast Facebook fan page and email us, rabblecast@gmail.com. Anything else, sir?
No,
Straight, simple, to the point, right?
absolutely.
All right, let's get into it.
All right.
Enjoy the show.
I think that was 10 seconds.
Just about, yes. For anybody who doesn't know what's going on, normally before we start, we try to put in a little bit of silence so that later on when I edit, you don't hear all the annoying stuff. And it works for the most part. We're still trying to get all the other things going. But, Zer, how are you?
I am keeping on. How are you, my guy?
I am hanging in there. I'm enjoying my summer hours. So it means I get to have Fridays off for the time being, which is great because work sucks. It's the only way
I
I can put it.
struggle to argue with you.
Yeah. Essentially, I know I've mentioned this a few times and I don't want to harp on it too much, but essentially when you go to a job and they tell you to do one thing and then the very next day they tell you to do the opposite, it's like, get your shit together, people. Come on. So, yeah, that's been my experience recently. And it's not the greatest one, but it is what it is. So,
You're paying bills. You're putting food on the table. You're putting bills on the table. You're whatever you need to do. And all points in between. There you go.
pretty much. But I always look forward to doing this. Sitting down, having
Yeah.
fun, and talking about a bunch of silly things. So, I have 3 items. Nothing in particular, no set order. So, from left to right, 1, 2, and 3. Pick a number, and we're going to start off on a fun subject, hopefully.
Okay. Before I pick a number, also I got one thing to talk about as well. But we'll work through your 3 things, and then somewhere in there we'll work in my one thing.
Oh, what's yours
Make
about,
sense?
though?
What's that?
What's yours about?
Well,
Wanna give-
we'll find out when we get there, guy.
You're not going to give me a hint or anything?
It involves the cinema.
Ooh, okay. So now I'm curious if one of my things might be one of yours.
All right, we shall find out. Okay, let's go with, we'll rip them off right in order. We'll start with number 1.
Okay, number 1. Let's see, I'm going to start off with the release date for number 1. Because I
Okay.
found it very, very interesting. It's been making its rounds online, and I find it very, very hilarious, especially when I had to explain to my son what it was. So first
Okay.
off, the release date is August 30th. So the end of this month. What are we at now? The 17th as we record this?
Yes, that sounds about right.
So just shy of 2 weeks away. A movie will be hitting theaters called Slotherhouse. Have you heard
Oh,
about
yeah, I
this?
saw that. Yeah,
It's exactly what it sounds like. It's not Slaughterhouse, it's Slotherhouse. Like
yes,
the sloth. And
yes.
when when I was at work, it popped up in one of the reels or whatever they call it, the shorts, and I saw it on silent at first. And when I saw it, I'm like, this has got to be like a fake or somebody's messing around. No, 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 no. Somebody decided that they were going to make a horror movie based off of a sloth. And I will attempt to read the summary here.
Fire away.
Emily Young, a senior, wants to be elected as her sorority's president. She adopts a cute sloth, thinking it can become the new mascot and help her win. Until a string of fatalities implicate the sloth as the main suspect in the murders. The sloth does not look anything remotely lifelike. Please, I implore anybody who has not heard about this or seen it yet, go check out the trailer. The sloth is clearly some kind of doll that they made up. It's got like weird animatronic features. I'm sure they've made many versions of it for whatever shots. It uses its big, three-pronged claw to commit its murders. And then at one point, they do like a quick cut of different people getting taken out, and you see them being yanked like off the floor or around the corner of a wall or something like that, and you're just like, who the fuck is falling for a sloth? But
yeah, they're not exactly a swift and silent killer or anything of that nature.
No, not at all. If you've seen any National Geographic in your days, whenever they show a little footage on the sloth, they're slow, they climb, they sleep a lot. Sure, they're cute as fuck.
They're vegetarian.
Good point. Thank you. What I could gather from watching the trailer is that I guess they took it out of the wild, and I guess one of the other sloth got pissed off or whatever the case is, and it wants revenge. I don't know. It looks funny. It looks weird. I can almost guarantee it's going to be one of those "How did this get made?" Features.
Mm-hmm.
So it's. I'm trying to see who else who made it actually. Writer, director. Here we go. Matthew Goodhue. Doesn't say who actually is putting it out, and I don't recognize any names in the cast. I don't know about this one. It's silly. It's fun. There's not too much information listed here. Locations, companies, production companies: Renegade Studios, Chicago; Talking Wolf Productions, Buffalo Speedway Film Company, and that's about it. The poster looks funny. The trailer looks funny. We'll have to wait and see on the 30th if Slotherhouse saves cinema.
I don't even know what to make of this one, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not sure. What studio put this out again?
I just read off a bunch of different production companies. It doesn't actually say a studio. Maybe if I put on the trailer, it'll give me a better idea.
Why do I get the sneaking feeling that this is a movie that was probably filmed a ways back and probably passed through a couple of sets of hand before it finally found distribution?
You know what? That could be it.
Mm-hmm. Because late summer, usually that stretch of time, because you said it's coming out August 30th.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much the Friday of Labor Day weekend. Not a lot of people go to the movies Labor Day weekend. That's pretty much, at that point, summer movie season's pretty much behind you. So, yeah, I kind of get this feeling that this is going to be a movie kind of like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas or Blade at best, or even Halloween H2O, where, yeah, they're probably, whoever ended up buying this probably said, okay, we'll drop it out. Hopefully, if we don't make our money back by the first weekend, then we're not making our money on this guy, because this movie might chart a little bit during the first weekend out of curiosity, and after that it's probably going to drop like a stone, and it'll probably be out of theaters in 3 weeks, 3 weeks tops.
I think you hit it pretty much right on the head.
That's why I would gamble on their guy.
I mean, it could be. Let's say in the weird circumstance, this could be another Snakes on the Plane.
Mm-hmm.
And people go watch it just because it's that bad of a movie that they're just anticipating it going to be that kind of fun, silly movie. I don't know. It's also, by the way, rated at PG-13. So I don't know exactly how much they're going to get away with in this case. It says Renegade. What was it? Renegade Studios, Chicago is the one that pops up for the studio.
What was it?
Renegade Studio Chicago.
I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah,
so.
neither am I. But I don't see much else going on with that one. So like you said, it seems like it's a throwaway weekend for Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
It's where movies go to die, essentially, that have not been released up until this point. What else is coming out between now and then? Well, Blue Beetle is the next big one from DC at the very least. That's coming
That's
out.
opening tomorrow.
Correct. I heard that the last voyage of the Demeter did not do so well.
No, I heard it didn't do well, but also that movie did not get a lot of advertising.
Mm-hmm.
And also somehow they made a feature film based on a section of the book Bram Stoker's Dracula that covered, I think, maybe 20 pages. For those of you who don't know, the Demeter, that was the ship when Count Dracula makes the move from mainland Europe to London. The Demeter is the ship that transports his coffins full of earth, including him. And from what I read, it's actually supposed to be, I heard for genre fans, it's not too bad. And it's kind of structured like a slasher film. And also you got David Mockley, you know that guy.
The Smolchin.
That guy, that fucking asshole. Who I actually kind of like, but I don't know. It's like you're not allowed to be famous when you have a last name like that. It's too confusing.
Who knows? Maybe it'll catch on.
I'm gonna give it. That's one of those movies. I'm probably gonna watch it sometime when I'm sure it'll be on streaming within the next month or two.
Yeah, the same thing was with Renfield, that they were saying that it didn't do so well at the theater and is considered a flop. But it's Nick Cage as a vampire.
Nick Cage as Dracula.
Yeah. So I don't know. Renfield, I do believe it's available on streaming. You don't have to rent or buy it. It's just streaming on. I can't remember which platform it's on.
It's on it's on Peacock right now.
Okay, so I have to check that one out. For the last voyage of the Demeter, I heard that they redesigned Dracula. I guess when he's in his bat form or whatever.
Yes.
So, and that was getting some criticism as far as like the appearance of it. I don't know. Look, there's only so many ways you can do a vampire, especially when you're speaking about Dracula. And I don't know what people expect anymore. You can't keep rehashing the same thing over and over. They're going to try something different, something new each time. Sometimes they'll hit the mark, sometimes they won't. But at the same time, it's just like, what are you expecting?
I always looked at it as either do something fresh and new, like they did with, and this is kind of a fresh and new take. I mean, that was a part that's usually glossed over pretty much in the movies, or it's a very small part of the movies. Or Renfield was kind of an interesting take as that focused more on the Renfield character and so on. I haven't seen that one yet. So either do something that's already been done, but do it better, or do something different.
Exactly. So we'll have to wait and see. Who knows? Maybe Slotherhouse might be better than Renfield. Oh, it'd be
Stranger
cool.
things have happened?
It would be cool if you find out like Nick Cage was the puppeteer behind Sloth and Slotherhouse.
Oh, good gravy.
It just has Nick Cage mannerisms. I don't know. I'm reaching for that one. But okay, that knocks out number one for me. You said you just wanted to go down the list, right?
Yeah, let's jump to number two whenever you're ready there, fella.
All right. The other one that came up recently, and I just saw the trailer before going on air with you, was Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Are you familiar with this one?
No, what's that?
So now they're making an animated series of Scott Pilgrim. If you remember Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Unfortunately.
Well, now they're making an animated series. It has the style of the old book that it came out, but all of the voice actors are the actors who portrayed the characters on film in Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Okay.
So you've got Michael Cera, Chris Evans, Brandon Routh, Brie Larson. I believe just about everybody is coming back to reprise their characters, and they're going to redo the series. Now it's going to be on Netflix, and I do believe it's November 17th, if I remember correctly from the trailer. So,
okay.
Scott Pilgrim was, again, considered a flop at the box office, but a lot of the gaming nerds fell in love with it because it had a lot of homages, a lot of call-outs, and, different inspirations from video games, like whenever he beats one of the evil exes that was used to date Ramona Flowers, the score would pop up and coins would pop up everywhere, and he would collect the coins and say, "Oh," at one point he goes, "Oh, I have enough for a bus fare." Um, you would get power ups in the form of like heart canisters or weapons, depending on who we defeated, and like a lot of this stuff was just inspired by video games. But unfortunately, like I said, at the theater, for the mainstream audience, it didn't catch on. But once it went to streaming or to DVD back in the day, at that point, it found its audience, and a lot of people loved it, and they still hold on to it dearly. The comic book was really good. If you hadn't read that one, obviously inspired the movie itself. And then they made a 2D side scroller for Xbox and PlayStation, I believe, and that was just fun. It was like Double Dragon back in the day, with just power ups, and you can level up your character as you play through.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So a continuation of that, and the fact that they're all going to be coming back to do the voices is fun. And it's also fun that right now, with everything going on with, I know I've said it quite a few times, but with the writer strike and the actor strike going on, this is an animated feature. So they can talk about this, they can promote this. It's not under the same guidelines as live action actors. Being that it's animated, this one, sidesteps a lot of that stuff. Did you ever watch the old Scott Pilgrim movie?
I lived with Jimmy for years. Of course I did.
What was your take?
It more. Huh?
What was your take on it?
I do not like that movie.
Really?
I found it incredibly irritating, to be honest with you. And Michael Cera might have the most punchable face in this generation of cinema.
Okay.
Like and he's not a bad actor, but man, I just look at him, I was like, oh my god, I just want to, fuck you.
Understandable. All right, that's his pick for Scott Pilgrim was an interesting one at the very least. Everybody else, I think, did fantastic in their characters as they were chosen. Chris Evans was a fantastic asshole as one of the ex-boyfriends. Brandon Routh, same thing. He played like an evil ex-boyfriend who got his powers from being a vegetarian, or excuse me, a vegan.
Yes.
What else? Brie Larson as Scott Pilgrim's ex. She was badass. She's just a singer, performer, and just again flat out asshole as far as being an ex in the movie. I'm trying to think who else. Oh, Kieran Culkin, Macaulay Culkin's younger brother, who more recently got more famous for the show. Oh gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. It was on HBO, Succession, where he played one of the brothers, heir to the empire, played by Brian Cox. He was the father of the media company, and when he passes, everybody's like squabbling over who's going to take over from daddy and everything else. And Kieran Culkin's character of Rome, just fantastic asshole. He's just perverted, blunt, and just takes no prisoners. So his style of acting is fantastic, but you get to see glimpses of that in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So if you've never checked it out, highly recommend it. Who else? Mary Elizabeth Winstead played Ramona Flowers, and then you've mentioned Michael Cera. But
and Thomas Jane, the Punisher, was also in it.
That's right. They were the vegan police, right?
He was one of the vegan cops. Yeah,
with finger pistols that actually had like lasers coming out of them.
It was something like that, and I want to say they also may have levitated.
Wait, I thought he levitated. Brandon Routh's character.
I think vegans can levitate. It was something, I don't know. I haven't watched that movie probably since 2015 or 2016. So yeah, I've been doing my best to try to forget chunks of it because, like I said, I recognize people like it, but yeah, it's not for me, guy.
Really?
Yeah. Well, hey, not everything is for everybody. I don't like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and I don't like the Beastie Boys. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm with you on the Beastie Boys, but so are you telling me that eggs aren't vegan?
What?
That's one of the lines from the movie.
Oh, okay.
when the vegan police comes after Brandon Routh, and they read the list of offenses, and then at one point he just responds, "Eggs aren't vegan," and like, take him down, depower him, whatever the case was, and they move along with the story. Okay, so that takes off. Well, Scott Pilgrim takes off. That finishes that one. And let's see what else. Okay, and this one plays into, again, the Marvel, well, I should say, the Hollywood actors and writers strike. Marvel's special effects artists are now pushing to unionize. Have you heard this story?
No. I've been a little out of touch this past week, so
That's fine. A lot of the stories that I've just came across, the ones that I just picked out of all the ones that I've found, I pretty much researched yesterday and today because it's been a busy week for me as well. Things have been just all over the place. But Marvel Studios has been getting a lot of flack recently for a lot of their movies becoming lackluster, especially the movies and the TV series, because some of the special effects just haven't been quite up to par. Did you watch Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness?
yes.
Do you recall the bonus scene at the very end where Doctor Strange's third eye pops up?
Very vaguely.
Most people are trying to forget this one too. The effect just looks odd. Looks like somebody just pasted something on his forehead. There was very little detail, very little movement to it. It just looked very blah. And then if you push forward for some of the other stuff, Ant-Man and Quantumania, some of the effects, give or take here and there, but more specifically, the one that was called out was the effect for MODOK, being that they used a human head and then they based it off of the character of Darren Cross. I can't remember the actor's name off the top of my head, but they enlarged his head, but then gave him the little arms and the little legs and the little exosuit, and it had this uncanny valley feeling where sometimes it looked good. Other times it just looks creepy as fuck, and you're just like, no, just get it off the screen. Like, keep the faceplate on him instead of seeing the human face, because it just looked wrong. And Marvel Studios has just been having a lot of trouble. They're trying to hit these deadlines, trying to push the teams to finish certain effects on time. I believe She-Hulk was another one that was plagued by this, where they're just trying to get these done, and sometimes when they push out the trailer, some of the stuff is unfinished, or some of the things get changed from the trailer to the final product. And then when it is released, let's say in the theaters, Thor Love and Thunder had a few effects here and there where in the theater they looked raw and unfinished in certain cases, and when they finally released it on Disney Plus, they changed it up, and in some cases not for the better. So it's been kind of interesting, but that all leads to their special effects artists getting pushed to do long hours, crazy deadlines, multiple projects, and unpaid overtime. All this is going to lead to that last one, huh?
Yeah, that last one, that's asking for trouble.
All of this leads to just a bad setup as far as everything that's going on, especially right now with this summer. A lot of different places not having it anymore. Again, writers and actors, that's one thing. We just had UPS that almost went on strike. They averted that one, thankfully, because they were able to come together at the negotiation table and hammer out a deal. But there's just been a lot of different places that have been saying, like, look, we're overworked, we're underpaid, we're not appreciated, and unless we get fair compensation for what we do, we're out of here. And now Marvel's special effects artists. Now, let me make this very clear as well. So this is Marvel's special effects artists. This does not affect the overall special effects industry. And this also, I don't believe this affects anything out of the United States as well. So,
well, okay, but if they're working for Marvel, that means they're working for Disney.
Yes, but the problem with that is they might start outsourcing a lot of these jobs to other houses as well.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So a lot of times what happens in movies, especially, so Lucasfilm for the longest time was like the place for a lot of special effects. Then when Peter Jackson created Weta, which is another special effects house that did Lord of the Rings and some other Peter Jackson movies, they became another go-to. So when Lucasfilm was being inundated with projects, you can call up Weta and they'll work on a bunch of different things. Now other smaller houses have been coming up and they've been doing special effects for TV, for streaming online, whatever the case is. There's a lot of different projects out there. Like we were talking about how there's so much content, well, there's so much demand for all these things to get done. And when you don't think about it, you watch a TV show, you're like, oh, I'm watching like a cop procedural. There's not many special effects. Well, if there's gunfire, if there's certain like car chases or certain stunts, they might add a few things here and there. Some of the blood spatter nowadays is special effect or CGI. Some of the muzzle flashes from the guns nowadays, especially after the Rust incident with Alec Baldwin, they've now been reduced to using CGI muzzle flashes because they don't want actual guns being fired off, or let alone mostly it's blanks, but in certain cases they might use a live round just for special shots or special setups. They're trying to avoid all of that now. So whenever you see a gun going off, 9 times out of 10, it's probably a CGI muzzle flash. If I remember, I want to say John Wick. John Wick, if you go back and watch, especially some of the behind the scenes, they use CGI muzzle flashes. And it's interesting to see because the way that they portray their gunplay, it's done very well, so they can actually pull it off, and you really can't tell the difference unless somebody points it out. So it's just one of those things. You're like, oh, okay, well, they're just trying to take advantage of that standard now and use it to the best of their ability. If you watch like a B movie, there's a bunch of stuff going on that probably has like the wrong muzzle flash or the wrong rhythm when a gun goes off. It probably has like the rhythm of an Uzi as opposed to a handgun, whatever the case is. It might not be well done depending on where you go. But what I'm saying is you have more CG nowadays than you realize in certain cases.
Yeah.
So what that means for Marvel's team, hopefully if they slow things down, because this will be good overall. If it forces Marvel to slow down their movies just a tad, because people are saying that superhero fatigue is a thing now, where just so many superhero movies coming out, people stop caring about the overall effect of the movie. The overall storyline isn't the same. I mean, you could harp on any number of objects for the current phases of Marvel movies, but they've been trying to hit you so hard and fast with all these different projects that sometimes some of these special effects that are getting pulled off, like, just, they're not going to be up to par. So if this slows them down, hopefully increases the quality, hopefully gives them the time to do it correctly, and hopefully they get paid that overtime, or at the very least a fair wage to make sure it gets done correctly.
And the other thing too with this is, I wonder why. I mean, for the longest time, what were we looking at? It was generally, 2 Marvel movies a year?
2 to 3, depending, yeah.
Okay. And now they're trying to do at least 2 a year. I think, actually, no, this year they're doing 3 this year plus TV shows.
Yes.
Yeah, they can calm down. In fact, they need to calm down. Because, we had Quantumania, we had Guardians 3, Secret Wars, and I think there's something coming out in the fall, the Eternals or the Mysticals or the Magicals or the whatever the fuck.
It was Secret Invasion that just played recently. Loki 2, Season 2 is coming out later this fall, and it's the Marvels coming in November.
There we go.
But, no, you're right. There's so much coming out. Like, fucking slow down a little bit. Pump the brakes.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Like, let's go for quality over quantity. And let's try to get them back to the point where we actually, excuse me for one moment. I hate that feeling when you're like on the edge of a sneeze, but it's just like, nah, fuck you. Sorry.
No worries.
I'm trying not to sneeze into the phone and like jack up the levels and everything else.
You got me worried for a second there. It's all right.
But just to get back to the point, we can pump the brakes, slow it down, space out your content, maybe come up with what seems like a actual reasonable battle plan for going forward here, because I don't know if it was the Infinity Stones saga wrapping up after all those years, or the pandemic, or what happening, but when you strap everything together like that, you just get to this point of it's like, you ain't what I remember looking forward to, like, oh cool, what Marvel movie's coming out next, like what's the story going to be for this one, how is it going to advance the overall story, like what kind of interesting things are going to happen, like what cool characters are we going to get introduced. And now it's just like, oh fuck, there's another one to watch. Like, I waited until June to watch Quantumania because I just really didn't have that much interest. I mean, the first 2 Ant-Man movies were fine, but the third one, I was just, it took me like 2 sittings before I finally got through it. I had the same issue with Guardians 3. I'd watch it and I just stopped paying attention for part of it. So yeah, we're just hitting that point. I mean, Thor: Love and Thunder was silly, but I don't want to turn this into Bash Marvel hour because they really did give us a lot of good. I mean, their batting average is still pretty damned high. So
Yeah, I mean, look, Disney bought all these different IPs and absorbed all these different IPs, not to sit on them. They want to put stuff out. They want to keep them alive. They want them to make money. And I get that. And the other reason I can see why they would put so many projects out all at once is because they're trying to take advantage of the actors they have currently. One of the
yeah,
big things that was said about Robert Downey Jr. and especially Chris Evans, they're older. So, especially in the case of Robert Downey Jr., like you can only have him around for so long. Now, there's a rumor. Don't hold me to this. There's a rumor that with the continuation of the movies, once they do like a multiverse reset of sorts, you might have a return of Robert Downey Jr. maybe for like one or two films or one or two
huh.
projects. I don't know how that entails, but like he got done doing his Marvel stint. It was like, all right, I've been doing this for like what 10, 11 years. Let me call it quits for now because I want to go do other stuff. Same thing with Chris Evans. Chris Evans wanted to do independent films. He wanted to direct himself. So why not? And I remember there was the one, and was like a secondhand comment that I heard, where when they signed him to do Captain America, then they did Avengers. At one point, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and we're gonna lead up to another Avengers movie, and then we're gonna lead up to the end of the Infinity Saga." And Chris Evans is like, "All right, well, we want to get this done, and let's get it done now because I'm not getting any younger, and I'm losing my hair." So it's fair. You want these characters to look a certain way. In the comics, they don't age. Depending on the artist, they might change things here and there, but on film, they're going to get older. I mean, if you look at Robert Downey Jr. from Iron Man 1 to Endgame, he noticeably ages.
Hmm. Oh
And
yeah.
it's not a bad thing. I mean, these characters are going to go through some shit in storyline. They are going to change their appearance. But you want to be able to take advantage of them. You want to make sure that you can reuse them in certain cases. I mean, look, we lost Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
I really would love to have seen what Black Panther 2 would have been. Not to say that Black Panther Wakanda Forever was bad in any way. I actually love that movie. But the father-son storyline that was originally written for that script, I would have loved to have seen it. Because the way that was told, I believe from, who was it? Ryan Coogler, the director and writer of the films, said that, look, T'Challa gets snapped away for 5 years, and his son grows up without him around. And when he comes back, it's the idea of now he has to try to learn who his son is, and his son has to try to learn who the father is after being absent for 5 years.
Oh, that actually sounds really good.
Exactly. It would have been a fun little adventure between the two of them going out and trying to come together in that relationship. But we never got that. So they had to pivot and figure out how to make it work and still include, again, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen Wakanda Forever at this point. They reveal that T'Challa and his girlfriend, I can't remember her name now. Gosh darn it.
No,
But
I can't remember. Don't feel bad.
yeah, the one Wakandan special agent that they send to go deep cover, T'Challa and she have a child, and it was agreed upon by the two of them that the child should grow up outside of the kingdom so he's not inundated with all the other stuff, also to keep him safe. At the end of Wakanda Forever, you find out who the child is, and the child has T'Challa's name, so it's, kind of like a T'Challa Jr., so he will be the Black Panther eventually. But he gets to meet his auntie, who just now recently became the Black Panther and the Guardian of Wakanda. So it's just like that's fucking cool. Let's see that continuation. But again, if they don't do these movies soon enough, one, audiences tend to forget, and two, these actors want to do other stuff, and they're not getting any younger. So they're gonna want to take advantage of whatever they can do while they can outside of these projects. I think it was Zoe Saldana, who has been in a number of different projects. She's in the two biggest movie franchises so far, and that's the Marvel movies, Guardians, Infinity War, Endgame, and all that stuff, and also in the Avatar movies. But even she says, like, she's kind of handcuffed to these franchises right now because when they call you and say, all right, we need you in this country, we're going to be doing shoots, you can't say, no, I have something else going on. You signed a contract, you got to go.
Yup.
So because of
Golden
that,
handcuffs.
exactly. So it's a problem I would love to have, to be honest, but they get a chance to be in these huge films, these blockbuster films that make ridiculous amounts of money, and so long as they do well in the theater, I'm sure they get some, residuals or points on the back end, whatever it's called. They hit certain bonuses, and then at that point, they're just raking it in, which is fantastic for them. But I can see where it would be frustrating if you want to do an independent film, if you want to go on vacation, if you want to work on something else, if you want to be behind the camera instead of in front of the camera, like stuff like that. After a while, you just want to do different things. We talked about Oppenheimer and Robert Downey Jr. Supposedly, like, his role in that one, you can tell me because I still haven't seen it yet. He does a fantastic job in that role, and people are like, oh my God, he's such a great actor. I'm like, yeah, well, he's been in other stuff other than Iron Man. Come on, people.
Yeah, people forget that he had an excellent run back in the 90s. But unfortunately, then, like, by the, later on in the decade, like, he got jacked up on dope. So he did lose that time period where he was just not doing great. But, people forget there's a bunch of good movies he did, like Chaplin biopic. He was excellent as the scummy tabloid reporter in Natural Born Killers.
Yeah, one of my favorite roles for him, yeah.
Yeah. Which is so weird to go back. Like, I was looking at clips of it now, and I was like, my God, he was a baby. But he was, like, I think in his 30s at that point.
I remember seeing him in Weird Science back in the day in the 80s.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that one.
Yeah, he's one of the bullies for, Gary and Wyatt.
Yes.
I'm pulling names out of my brain now. But yeah, initially they make fun of the nerds. They make fun of what they do, whatever the case is. Any chance they get it, they get to pick on them. But once they create the character of Lisa, they're like, oh, now we want to be friends, and becomes a different story. But the silliness of those films, and especially the time that they were made, and you're like, oh wow, this is so much fun. But people forget about those. Again, the audiences just move on, especially generations. They don't watch those old movies sometimes, and they forget what some of these actors have pulled off in their past. That they're like, oh, he's Iron Man. Yes, but he's done more than Iron Man. Come on. That's again, being typecast or pigeonholed, whatever the case is. It's one of the things a lot of actors want to try to avoid. So he'll do a Dr. Dolittle. He'll do whatever other films, I can't remember off the top of my head, besides
Sherlock Holmes.
Thank you. Sherlock Holmes was a fucking amazing film. Both of them.
Yeah, Tropic Thunder.
They try to avoid Tropic Thunder only because it still gets backlash, and the current generation wants to try to crucify them still for some of the jokes they pulled off back then. I believe it was one of the stories like, do you think you could pull off the blackface character today? He goes, I wouldn't, but you could. Like what was the premise of that one again? He was a South African actor who wanted to go so far into the role, method acting, that he actually got his skin colored darker so that he could portray a black character in the Tropic Thunder movie.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah, like he was. Well, I didn't really have a problem with it because I looked at it and I was like, oh, they're making fun of like the crazy method actors, like a Gary Oldman or a Daniel Day-Lewis, or to a lesser extent Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
The people were like, yeah, or Jim Carrey notoriously did that a bunch of times where, yeah, it's like, okay, I'm going so deep into this character, you're not even talking to me for the duration of filming.
The movie Man on the Moon, Andy Kaufman comes to mind for that one.
That's the one I was just thinking of, where people even said it was like he was, yeah, you were not talking to Jim, you were talking to Andy for the duration of filming for that one.
Yeah, it was all just, a satire on that. And I didn't appreciate Tropic Thunder for what it was when I first watched it. When I watched it, like, in subsequent viewings, I'm like, oh, I get it now. Okay, like, it's supposed to be funny. It's not just supposed to be the action movie that it was billed as, kind of thing. Because even the simple Jack character that Ben Stiller does is like, okay, actors who get, awards for playing these handicapped or, to a lesser extent, what's the word I'm trying to use here? Oh no, the algorithm's going to come after me. Yes, there you go. You can use that one. You save me from using other ones. But yes, mentally disabled characters or people portraying them and getting awards for them, like Billy Bob Thornton playing in Sling Blade.
Yes.
So along those lines, and he still gets crap for it, but people just miss the idea or the point that it's supposed to be a satire, and they can't get past the joke. More recently, and different reasons, the Barbie movie is still getting a lot of crap from people saying, "Oh, it's anti-masculine or anti-male." It's giving this horrible example for women. Like, do you realize it's a funny movie? They're not trying to push politics or agenda on you. They just found a way to crack the code on Barbie and have it be fun and exciting. But people are saying that, oh, this is a horrible thing. This is going to over the top for women empowerment. No, just watch the movie again. It's fun and silly. It's based off of a doll. Come on, people. So those are my 2 cents. But yeah, we'll see what happens, because now that a lot of places are going back to the whole Marvel special effects unionizing, a lot of these places are going to want to try to get what they believe they should get paid and what believe they should have as far as benefits, time off, and everything else like that, healthcare, and it's not out of the realm of possibility to get these. The studios have to say, okay, yeah, I guess we have been milking this cash cow a lot more than we probably should have or ought to have, and relent, make some concessions, and take care of them. Because if you want these movies to come out and look good, these are the people that you rely on. Yes, you have your actors, directors, and writers, and everybody else in between that makes it all come together, but the final polish, special effects, has a lot to do with.
Oh yeah.
So let's pay them. Let's pay them fairly, because otherwise shit's not going to be right. And I would love to keep getting my Marvel movies, even though I agree they need to slow down and they need to tighten up the belt a little bit. The storylines have to be a little bit more concise. The storylines have to flow into one another a little bit more. I'm actually kind of happy that the Blade movie has been on hold for a while now. Not just because of the actor strike and the writer strike, but they had problems with the director exiting the project. They have to find a new director. And Mashahara Ali at this point is just like, what the fuck? Are we making this movie or not?
Yeah, it's got to be frustrating for that poor fella.
Yeah, because again, you have other projects that you might have to pass up on because you agreed to do this one. And if this one gets delayed, everything else in your slate gets pushed back as well. Unless you can get some kind of a waiver and they're like, oh, okay, you can go for like 5 months, but we need you back this date. So whatever the case is. But all right, well, that's rounds up my 3. What did you have?
And it kind of plays off of what you just talked about. On Sunday, I went to go see the Barbie movie.
Oh, no shit.
Yep.
How did this one play out?
My girlfriend said, hey, I'm interested in going to see that. And I said, yeah, I'll go with you. And she said, really? And I said, yeah, why not? I'll get to spend time with you. And you know, as I said to her when we were talking about it, when I first heard they were doing a Barbie movie, my first thought was, oh, this is just going to be some silly ass movie designed to sell toys. And I mean, I'm sure there's some merchandising tie-ins to this one, but all of a sudden, like, and I never thought I'd say this about the Barbie movie. Yeah, they whip a lot of stuff at you in terms of feminism, patriarchy, existentialism, and some stuff like that. And at one point, I was like, what the fuck is going on here?
So let me ask you a quick question. When they're doing the house party and they're dancing outside of the dream homes, and stereotypical Barbie goes, hey, do you guys ever think about dying? And the music stops. What was your take on that one?
I started laughing hysterically.
Okay.
Because I was not expecting that at all. Because I went to this one relatively cold.
Okay, well, fair enough. When I was in the theater watching that one, that line in particular, I thought you would laugh at that. I'm like, I hope Doug sees this, because this this is the line that would get him right there. Besides everything else they're throwing, like I said, it's just they're flinging stuff at you. So keep going. What else did you think about it?
Some of the song and dance routines I didn't care for, but that's not my cup of tea. And I always found those kind of annoying, truth be told, which is why musical theater is just not my thing. Other than that, some of my takeaways from it were and I didn't think of it as anti-man at all. I looked at it as, you don't have to define yourself by anyone else. You could just choose to define yourself how you choose. Since I think part of the problem that Ken was having was, he was like, it's always Barbie and Ken. So I'm like defined through her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, yeah, then just, you figure what the fuck you want out. Gosling is very good at playing a dildo. The other laugh out loud moment I had was when they basically played Push by Matchbox 20 for like 4 hours.
Yes.
That was that was fucking hilarious. Um, Bloody hell, I'm trying to remember what other stuff I found. Yeah, I've never liked Will Ferrell, so once again he annoyed me in this, but that guy's been driving me nuts for 20 plus years now. I'm trying to think what other like big items I really like got from the whole thing. It was good to see Rhea Perlman. I honestly thought she'd passed away.
Oh yes, is Ruth Handler.
Yeah, I was sitting there watching the thing, and all of a sudden, like, she came on for that one scene when Barbie's running around the Mattel corporate headquarters, and I'm like, holy, and I'm like looking because for a second I was like, why does she look familiar? And then it was like, oh Jesus, that's Rhea Perlman. And I actually even like kind of like I had to run to the bathroom and take a piss, and while I was doing that, I was like, I Googled like. I just looked her up really quick, and I was like, "Oh, she just doesn't like. She's just not been doing a ton of projects." Um, which was hilarious because, spoiler alert, she was supposed to be playing a ghost because Ruth Handler died like 20 something years ago, I think.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I said, it was, and I said, like I said, I said the same exact thing to I went with my girlfriend, and I looked at her afterwards, and I was like, I never thought I'd say this, but damn, the Barbie movie just whipped a lot of shit at me. So yeah, it was one of those things where I was like, I appreciate what they were going for, and yeah, if somebody's complaining about any type of that, like, oh, it's anti-man or something like this, it's also, I've seen interpretations that said it's pro men, it's anti-toxic masculinity. I've seen other people say, well, it's feminist. I've seen some other people actually point out, well, it also has, it's flawed because there's also like they inadvertently do some patriarchal shit and like all these different analyses and stuff like that. And it actually made me, I don't know why it came back to this, but it made me think of Fight Club.
Weird.
And I probably need to explain that, don't I?
Yes, you do.
So one of the things I've always appreciated about Fight Club when that came back way back in 1999 is nobody could seem to agree what the big takeaway was from the movie. I mean, people were arguing about it left and right for like months after they came out, and I think it was the fall of 1999. There were people like going, this film is pro-fascist, this film is anti-fascist, this film is about consumerism, this film is anti-consumerism, this film is about gay men, this film is about bisexual men, this film is about men in general, this film is about this film is about that. And I appreciate any piece of art where when you put a good piece of art out into the world, it makes people think, and everybody's going to have a different takeaway from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like the good thing. If everybody's seeing something a little bit different, because the worst thing you could say about a piece of art is, oh, that's nice, and then just kind of move on without really even stopping to think about it at all. So if Barbie, for good or bad or indifferent or whatever, it's making people actually look at like some of the themes they were chucking around and actually stop and think about them for 5 minutes, not bad. And some of the jokes were actually fucking, like I said, some of the jokes were fucking funny. So I'll give it that. But I mean, like I said, like it did get a little. There were some points where I was like, okay. I mean, I think the movie was only like an hour and a half long. We could have shaved that down to about. I think we could have shaved that one down to about 75 minutes.
Probably in certain cases, yeah, I'm sure. But
Mm-hmm.
they were having fun, especially with the visuals and everything else, and using just about everything that was pink in the world and just causing a shortage. So yeah, I mean, they had their fun. And apparently there was a lot of stuff that was cut. Either was they filmed it and it didn't work out well with the overall narrative, or in certain cases they didn't get to film certain things just because they had to change last minute and things just were moved around dramatically. But I mean, they stuck with the overall theme, the idea. They made it land. So one of the things that was said during the pitch meeting from Margot Robbie as they were meeting with different studios, because this movie did change hands quite a few times before it finally ended up where it was, and had Margot Robbie attached to it. But during the pitch, Margot Robbie had said, well, actually, here, before I even get to that, we had talked about the budget. This had a $100 million budget for the film itself. And we played this game last time. Can you guess how much it has made? We said opening weekend it did $162 million.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guess what the North American gross has been?
Didn't they crack $1 billion?
Globally, it has.
Oh, okay.
And that was one
in
of
North America only.
North America is $541 million.
Oh, okay.
But during the pitch meeting, Margot Robbie said this is a film that could be $1 billion grossing film. Guess what? She was right.
Oh, yeah.
So this one, 1.2 so far. I don't know how much longer its theater run's going to be. But even if it's a shortened theater run, this has overtaken The Dark Knight as a highest grossing movie for Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, and I was like, wow, that's pretty wild because, man, yeah, it's wild. Do you think about that back when Dark Knight came out in, what was that, 2008? That was the blockbuster that people had been waiting for at that point, years.
And if you would have said, between the two, pick one that's going to be the highest grossing one, not many people would have picked Barbie back then.
Mm-hmm.
And again, right now, considering what's going on with the cinema, considering that a lot of the different films that have been coming out that were supposedly guaranteed blockbuster hits, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, not doing so well. The latest Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 also didn't do so well. And that one's kind of a toss-up because that's a Tom Cruise movie. Top Gun Maverick did very well at the box office. Well, a lot of people were saying that was pretty much what started the saving of the box office. And they thought that another Tom Cruise movie would have been that, but not this one. I believe they were saying that both Mission Impossible and Indiana Jones are losing $100 million apiece.
Wow.
So you win some, you lose some on the balance sheet, but those two would not have been, pegged for flops. But in this case, that's what they come down to. And Oppenheimer did really well. Barbie is just absolutely killing it. And Slotherhouse might be a contender.
Yes. Yeah, the top movies of the summer are going to be, they're going to break down to Barbie, Oppenheimer, and Slotherhouse.
Look, if
that happens, I'll eat my hat.
If Slotherhouse doubles its budget, I'll be happy. Here's a wait and see on that one. Well, maybe we'll go back to that one and cover it and see what it was. But look, nobody thought it was going to be like this. Everybody kept saying, especially after the pandemic, the world is changing. This is the new normal. All those things that people were saying as far as the world in general and how the box office had to return to what it used to be, and new people have to, or excuse me, new audiences have to come back out and everything else. Nobody knows. Like the way it's going right now, the Marvels could flop hard.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know. And maybe people are just tired of, a lot of stuff just being thrown at them willy-nilly, but we have to have good movies that are made. In fact, I know we joked about it when we were talking about the review of Barbie when I watched it, saying that Mattel now wants to take other IPs, other toys or board games, and develop them into films or TV shows, which sounds great. But the idea of this is, let's not just take any old toy and make it into a movie. Let's take a good look at this as far as Barbie's concerned and say, why did this work? Why did it make so much money? Why was it so successful? It was successful because it was a pretty good script that was brought to life by a great director and great actors.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do that again. Let's not just make a schlock movie and hope that, because we put, choose whatever Mattel toy, I can't remember, I think we say like Magic 8 Ball or something like that, which I still stand by as a horror movie. But just because you slap a name on it does not mean it's going to be successful. We've already learned that this summer. So writing, directing, acting, all those come together and you can get a great film. if done right. But how many executives are going to want to try to push it through the pipeline, throw money at it, and, oh, this would be great because it's another IP from Mattel? Meh, not so much.
No, and right there, you've got the good. You're making the point now that they can put the marketing machine behind it as much as they want, but at the end of the day, if the movie doesn't have legs, it just doesn't have legs. I mean, once upon a time, like just 6, 7 years ago, whatever was like the big summer release for Marvel, that was guaranteed to be one of like the top grossing movies of the summer. Whether it was, even in the weird years in 2014, Guardians of the Galaxy was like the sleeper hit that broke out because nobody knew who the fuck the Guardians of the Galaxy was. In 2016, Captain America: Civil War was like the big one because that kind of set everything in place to be like, okay, now we're ready to start, the final sequence of this entire thing with Infinity War and Endgame and all of that stuff. Going back before that, I can't remember going back before that, but the point of the matter is, once upon a time, yeah, your Marvel movies, it's like, okay, these are going to be some of this is, it's going to be, our May release, it's going to be huge. And now, I mean, they did okay, but I mean, like, people have just collectively shrugged their shoulders and says, we've heard it all before. And I mean, yeah, you're always going to, I think comic book movies are eventually going to get to that point where they're just going to be like every other action franchise. You'll have the fans who are going to go see it. You'll have the casuals who are check it out, but it's no longer a point in viewing.
Yeah. I mean,
it is what it is. Oh, and the other thing, go ahead.
Sorry. The one that I want to bring up is that if you go back to the early phases, as far as like Thor the Dark World, Thor Ragnarok, and then Thor Love and Thunder, I mean, out of the four, I think Ragnarok is the one that's universally loved.
Yes.
Love and Thunder is fun and silly in certain points, but it just felt like they let them go too far without a leash. And Thor 1, okay, it introduces the character, but it was like one of the weaker films for the setup for the first Avengers movie. And then Thor the Dark World, just a lot of people want to forget it.
Can you remember who the villain was in that?
Yes, I don't remember the name of the villain off the top of my head, but I remember it was played by Chris Eccleston, and it was the Dark Elf.
Exactly. Yeah, and if anybody actually can remember that name without Googling it, you're better than I, because I watched that movie, and in about 20 minutes, I was like, what the fuck was that dude's name?
I want to
Other than I was
Malachi,
like, oh, it's Eccleston.
Like
what?
Malachi?
I don't know. Well, did you say so?
Now we're going to play a game and find out.
So. I mean, I remember it was Eccleston just because I was like, oh, hey, the Eighth Doctor, what's his name, and also Destro. Cool.
See, that just shows you that you remember he played Destro.
Well, you want to know why? Just because I have the G.I. Joe movies seared into my head, because that's what I was watching when one of the whatever hurricane hit New Jersey in, I think it was like late August, early September of 2011.
Wow, really?
Yeah, because I stayed up all night because we were having that leak in the roof of the house that we were all living in, so I had to periodically check it. So I was just like, well, I'm only catnapping tonight, so I just kind of sat in the living room watching stupid movies and dozing off periodically.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, I am looking over here. Sorry, not Malachi, Malekith. Close.
Yeah, there you go, Malekith. All right, fair enough.
I was this close. But you're right. No, it's like, who remembers that one? That was like one of the more forgettable characters, and unfortunately one of the more forgettable movies. The only thing that really keeps it alive, especially when they did the one storyline in Endgame, where they have to go back to that specific period in the timeline to grab the ether out of Natalie Portman's character. So without that connection, Thor the Dark World probably would have been more forgotten than it currently is. So
yeah, pretty much.
But I mean, that's about it. I mean, all that stuff is crazy. And I hope, like we were talking about, that Mattel takes the right lesson out of Barbie. Make better movies. Because right now, it seems like what Hollywood's doing is they're just throwing shit out there and hoping to see what sticks. In certain cases, it works. But when they want to start complaining that, oh, we don't want to put this much money behind this, or the budget for this one is too inflated. Well, you really don't need crazy money to make a good movie. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is a good example of that. I think that was like a more than $250 million for the budget.
You say so?
I want to say it was actually $500 million for that one, and people were saying that the way that they shot, apparently they did not go on location for a lot of the different ones. So the technology that they used, the de-aging for Harrison Ford's character, a lot of that just inflated the budget really crazy. Whatever the case was, Oppenheimer and Barbie had $100 million budget. Ideal, right there. Or if you want to go even further, like back in the days, and we were mentioning it before with Slotherhouse, potentially, we joke around that it could potentially be a big movie. But look, the first Halloween movie, how much was it?
Budget-wise?
Yeah.
Oh, good Lord. The first Halloween, bloody hell. I want to say it was, I don't even think it was $100,000. I think it was maybe $100,000 at best. Hold on. Let's hear it for the power of technology.
I'm looking it up as well.
I'm vamping. Okay. Fuck off, Google. I'm staying signed out. 300. Oh, pardon me. It was $325,000. Okay. So, still, that's $325,000 in 1977. So, do that as you will for whatever weird math you want to fuck with.
And what was the gross worldwide?
$47 million.
Out of $325,000, you get that much in return?
Well, keep in mind, that movie held the record for the highest grossing independent film for 20-something years, up until, I think, Blair Witch Project in 99.
Okay. I could
So,
see
yeah,
that.
it made killer money, but also, I mean, it's just one of those things where I was like, that's very far and few between.
Yeah, and it's movies like that you hope for. I mean, granted, it's like lightning in a bottle. You don't know what's going to happen. And these corporate types are always like, let's make a viral video. And they don't understand what it takes to make a viral video. You just don't will it into existence. The right audience finds it. The right subject material is used. And it just happens. Same thing with movies. I mean, yes, you could help it along with, again, writing, acting, directing. But you just never know what's going to hit big. The other one that I can think of was Paranormal Activity. I want to say there was a Blumhouse movie, wasn't it?
Yes.
Very little budget. Premise of the story was, a guy who just recently moved into a house. Weird shit started happening around. He goes, oh, what if this was actually like a story for a film, whatever the case is. And not only did the first movie hit big on a very low budget, but that then from there, they took it and made it into a franchise. And I don't care how much at that point you're throwing behind it. They kept making movie after movie after movie, and people kept watching them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a successful franchise there. The Saw movies. They just announced Saw 10.
Yes, a.k.a. Saux.
The funny thing I love about that, after watching the trailer, because once again, Jigsaw is up to his old shenanigans, they're like, the most successful horror franchise. I'm like, really? Wait, hold on. Really? And then you go back and you think about 10 movies, and just about every Saw movie was pretty big.
Yeah, they made money.
Yeah, they did very well for themselves. Let's see. I remember I told you a while back that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the live action film,
yeah,
back in the day was one of the highest indie movies. I have here the budget for that one was $13.5 million. Opening weekend $25 million, and then the gross $202 million. Again, another big success. You don't know where you're going to find it, whether it's kids movie or comic book, horror film, anything can hit it big. Do it right. Find your audience. Ta-da! Profit.
And therein lies the trick. If you crack that code, yes, congratulations. You're going to be a billionaire in a few short years. But yeah, you just never can tell exactly what's going to happen. And I mean, and a part of it is you need movies that are, there's less of a chance of a sleeper hit these days, just because theater times are so stuff is in and out of theaters really quick unless it's something that's guaranteed that it's going to crack a lot of money. Um, so it's one of those situations where every time I see it, all I can think is, everything's so calculated. It's no more of this chance of, oh, we're just going to put out this movie and it's just going to get like that word of mouth buzz going around. Like, hey man, you guys saw this movie last weekend. You should get to the fucking theaters and go check it out before it gets out. But also now again, I mean, and we're spoiled by the times as well because there has been a ton of movies where I've come through and I was just like, yeah, I'll just wait for that one on streaming. I'll watch it from the comfort of my home rather than having to deal with people in the theater because people are fucking scum.
Depending on your theater or your area, I could agree. Yes. Not denying that one.
Hmm.
I recently just watched, because it was on, what was it? Amazon Prime. I got to watch The Black Phone,
Oh yeah, how was
starring
that?
Ethan Hawke. So first off, it's people keep putting it in the horror genre because there is some horror and gore in it, but it's more of a suspense, supernatural thriller.
Okay.
So the premise of this is there's a little boy by the name of Finney, and it's like the mid to late 70s. Boys in the Denver town that he lives in start going missing, and nobody knows what's going on. There's this one person who's apparently abducting these kids, and they just refer to him as the Grabber. Played by Ethan Hawke. He's a magician, and he uses like a bunch of black balloons to mask when he's taking one of the children. And every now and then, as he's doing this, the balloons get loose or a balloon gets left behind, and that's the only like real calling card that they have that it's him. When he takes his victims into his basement or his dungeon, whatever you want to refer to it as, he keeps them there, and there's a black phone, like an old rotary phone, on the wall. It's
Hmm.
disconnected, does not work. But the boy hears it ring, and when he goes to pick it up, he hears voices. And it turns out to be the voices of the past children who were in that basement before him. Each one of them is trying to give him like a tip, like, I left this under one of the tiles, or if you go over here and dig out the screw, or if you move this over here, you might be able to reach the window. And he attempts all these different things. When the Grabber comes back down and he's wearing like this weird, like devilish clown mask, he'll refer to the phone and says, "Oh yeah, every now and then you might hear it ring, but it doesn't work. It's disconnected. Trust me, I've tried. Must be like electrostatic energy that's making it ring. It just doesn't work any at all." Later on, one of the spirits tells Finney that, oh, he hears the phone and he could hear us, but he wants to make pretend that he can't. So whatever this supernatural element of the story is, gives it this really nice through line, because at one point, Finney's talking to one of the boys, and as the camera pans around, suddenly that boy is standing behind him, but they're like all bloodied and paled and everything. Like you see the effects of what the Grabber did to him.
Mm.
So like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. And it just becomes like, all right, Finney, one of these days you're gonna have to stand up for yourself. You have to be able to, take care of yourself. And people are trying to figure it all out. Meanwhile, his sister is having like dreams, and in her dreams she can see glimpses of what happened to the other boys. When the cops question her at one point, they're like, "You had mentioned this detail, and that detail when you were talking to your counselor or to your teacher." It's like, yeah, well, what of it? Well, those are details that were never released to the public, so how do you know them? And the best that she can say is that she saw it in a dream. Meanwhile, her mother apparently had the same gift, but that drove her to killing herself at one point. So the father doesn't want for his daughter to have the same gift and potentially meet the same end as his wife. So
Okay.
all of these elements come together, and the idea of Ethan Hawke playing this bad guy is pretty freaking cool. Like the movie is really well done. It's not that long at all. I think it's like an hour and a half, maybe a little bit less. But it all comes together very neat. And then as I was looking into the movie after the fact, Ethan Hawke apparently doesn't want to play the bad guy. He's not really into horror movies. But when he got the script, he was told to read it and see what you think. He called the director. I want to say it was Scott Derrickson,
Okay.
and he that night he got a call from Ethan Hawke, and he called him using the voice that he decided would be the character of the Grabber.
Hmm.
So like this weird, like creepy, soft-spoken voice. And Derrickson was all excited. Now, please, if you, one of the things I should mention is that Scott Derrickson at one point was the director of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, but because of differences of what they wanted to do, Derrickson stepped away from that film and instead just stayed on as producer. So it makes you wonder what he could have done, because Multiverse of Madness was supposed to be Marvel's horror movie, quote unquote. It didn't get to quite that level, but and the other thing that I want to mention as well is this is a Blumhouse production, and when it finally got the green light from the head of Blumhouse, they heard that Scott Derrickson was going to be moving into a new home. So after he closed on the home, they went in there and they did something. They went to his basement and they installed a black phone.
Really?
It was set up so that when you pick the receiver off the phone, it speed dialed the head of Blumhouse Studios. So at first the guy was freaked out, like, what the fuck? But all excited at the same time because his movie idea was getting brought to life. He walks over, picks up the phone, and like, congratulations, we can't wait to see what you do with this. So,
oh, that's interesting.
Fun little things here and there. But yeah, if anybody gets a chance to watch it, I think it was 2021 when the Black Phone came out.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I was hoping to catch that one in the theater, but I was like, if I don't catch there, like you said, sometimes the audiences for those kind of films are hit or miss as well. So I was just like, we'll wait and see what happens. And then I just had some free time over the weekend. I was like, you know what? Why not? Checked it out. I had to watch it in 2 sittings because I was busy with some other stuff, but the story just kept me enthralled. I was really excited to see what was happening. And the end is very satisfying. So,
all right.
If you get a shot, like I said, I believe it was Amazon Prime. Yeah. I very, very much recommend that one. And the funny thing was, with the end, they have the thumbnail of Ethan Hawke's character just standing in the doorway wearing the clown devil mask. My youngest son walks into the living room and just looks up at the screen and just stares at it and then starts jumping up and down. I'm like, oh boy, you're freaky. Not dealing with that one, bud. But no, that's a good one. And I'm hoping to catch a few other ones here and there as well and see what else I've missed and what else I can use to fill the time or when I'm doing stuff around the house. So we'll see.
All right.
Any other plans or anything you want to mention?
No, I'm good.
Yeah. Nothing after the Barbie movie? You don't have any other movie plans set up?
I rewatched Superman 3 the other day.
Ooh, what brought that on?
I was listening to How Did This Get Made about Superman 3. I was like, and I was at my local library and I was just wandering through the DVD section, just looking around because I usually just grab books. And I saw, they have Superman 3 here. It's like, I should watch this and see if it's as ridiculous as I remember it. And guess what? It is.
That's the one with Richard Pryor, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And that is the one where famously Richard Pryor and Robert Vaughn have a 2-minute long conversation about socks. And it's the dumbest, best thing you've ever seen.
See, not only that one, but also Superman 2, when How Did This Get Made did it, and they invited Jack O'Halloran on stage.
Oh, yeah.
To talk about behind-the-scenes stuff. Yeah, those definitely, they make it nostalgic. Like, oh, let's go back and check these out. And yeah, they're just as silly as you remember them and as they recall them, so...
Well, my favorite takeaway from that was basically Jack O'Halloran talking about how Christopher Reeve was acting like such a cock that when he grabbed Christopher Reeve by the neck and Richard Donner just said, Jack, just don't hit him in the face. Because Jack O'Halloran was trained as a boxer in Philly, and he purports to that his father was like a big to-do in the Philly mob. So
yeah, he put a book out about that, if I ever recall. They were talking about it. So
yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
If anybody wants to check out some Superman 2 and 3 action, highly recommend it on that one as well. The big thing that always gets to me in Superman 3, it was at the very, very end, where they build this computer that was supposed to be able to predict all of Superman's actions and defeat him. In the early versions of that script, that computer was supposed to be Brainiac.
Yeah, I heard that.
But due to budget and story changes and the changes from Richard Donner over to the Salkinds, and who was Richard Lester was the one who took over.
Yes.
It became less superhero, more comedy. So a lot of things went by the wayside, and Brainiac was one of them instead. The sister of Robert Vaughn's character gets sucked into the computer, and like all these like electronic parts that were slapped onto her, and she became like a robotic zombie, which I'll admit when I was a kid, freaked the fuck out of me.
Dude, I remember that as a kid. That scared the hell out of me. Now it's just like, oh man, this is so, I love how ridiculous this is. That it's like, yeah, she gets pulled into the computer and turned into a robot.
Like she starts like moaning and screaming. I'm like, oh my god, what's happening? All of a sudden, like she's like shooting lasers out of her finger and her eyes. I'm like, all right, what the fuck just happened?
Yep.
But I always wanted to play the video game that they show as Superman's flying, defeating all the missiles as he's flying through the canyon. I was like, really?
I also look, if you listen closely, they're clearly using like some of the music from Pac-Man.
Yes. Good times. All right, sir. I do believe we put in our time for tonight. How do you feel about this?
I think we got a good solid affair here, so I think we're good.
All right, well, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. My name is Eric Hernandez, along with
Doug.
And as always, thank you for listening. We are the Rabblecast.